Do you want to catch striped bass today? Let me go ahead and tell you this method for striped bass fishing that is easier than any other method you're going to. My favorite way is light tackle jigging for striped bass. Light tackle jigging is basically taking that equipment you would use for bass fishing, and instead of using for bass fishing, you're using it for striped bass. And normally what you're doing is jigging actual jig heads with soft plastics or even metal jigs on birds that are breaking or fish that are breaking and birds that are working, or different structure around the Chesapeake Bay. Now that's kind of the 30,000 foot overview of it. Let me go into some details so you're better prepared to start light tackle jigging today. My favorite setup for light tackle jigging is going to be anywhere between a 6 foot and 7 foot medium powered fast or extra fast action rod. Now I'm partial to St. Croix, but there's lots of good local builders around here that will build you a great custom rod. But if you want one off the rack, I really love my St. Croix rod. So I go with the 6 foot 3 St. Croix, a 2500 series reel. I don't spend a bunch of money on a reel. I'm not looking for the smoothest drag. Spoiler alert, rockfish or striped bass are not the best fighters out there. And you can get by, I have a Sedona on this one, a Shimano Sedona. You can get by with a fairly inexpensive reel. You're gonna load that line or that reel up with 10-pound braided line or 15 or 20. I prefer 10 because it's enough strength, but definitely still is a thin enough diameter that it gets down in the water easily. And then a leader on the end of that. And I think the leader is super important, not just so the fish doesn't see that braided line, but also for abrasion reasons. Striped bass have really spiny fins and they can easily nick and cut braided line. So having that fluorocarbon just makes it a little bit easier for you to fight abrasion and to get those fish in. And I think it does add the stealth factor to when you're fishing, and it makes it a little bit better presentation for those striped bass to eat your lure. Now my preferred baits are definitely going to be soft plastics. And what I do is I take those soft plastics and I'll use really kind of any of them. I love Bustin' baits. There's also BKDs. I'm partial to Z-Mans as well because they're so tough. You can pull them and they don't break and all that kind of stuff, especially when there's bluefish around. They're a little pain in the butt to get on jig head sometimes, but you know, I'm not picky about which one I'm going to use. But you know, it kind of depends on what the fish are doing at that time. And I'll try different baits throughout the time that I'm fishing it a day to see if the 5-inch works best or the 7-inch works best or what weight works best. But basically it's just experimentation with those soft plastics. And then the same thing with the jig head. You got to figure out which jig head size or even jig head type is going to work best. So for example, if fish are suspended, I love using one of these weedless eye strike hooks. They're a lighter one and it just gives that perfect flutter as it's dropping down into the zone where those fish are suspended. Now, a lot of people, especially in the light tackle jigging community, feel that metal jigs aren't part of that light tackle jigging. I completely disagree. You don't have to have a soft plastic on there for it to be jigging. I think metal jigs, especially during the wintertime, are some of the best lures you can use for light tackle jigging. Now, the key with light tackle jigging with a metal is you got to use a little bit different technique, and we'll talk about technique on the next point here. So how to light tackle jig is a pretty simple concept. You're basically just taking a spinning or a conventional rod with the setup that I just told you, and you're dropping that jig down most of the time to the bottom, and you're jigging it up and down. Now, that sounds really simple, but there's some things you got to keep in mind. The fish normally hits on the drop after you jig up. So if the fish is hitting on the drop and you're not following that lure back down, not letting any slack occur in the line, you're going to miss the strike every single time. Now, on top of that, the strike isn't something that's really, severe for the most part. When you're dropping back down, that strike almost feels like someone just kind of flicked your arm or something like that, or flicked you. It's a very light tap a lot of the times, but right when that happens, that's that fish sucking it in, and that's when you got to set the hook. That's kind of the general overview, and if you want to get a little bit, fancier, there's so many different ways that people jig. You can drop down to the bottom and give some sharp twitches up or just light twitches. Now, I said the metal jigs, and for soft plastics, those sharp twitches can really be deadly when the fish are really active. As it gets colder and fish slow down, I don't think you need that much of a whip action when you're jigging, and especially if you're using a metal jig, you do not want to do too much of a whip action because then it's going to get tangled up and just cause more problems than it's worth. So you really got to get out there and experience different kind of scenarios to see which one's going to work best for you. That's kind of like, you know, a general overview of how to do it. Now you're going to try to figure out where to go fish. So I think the best thing to do when you first start jigging, and this kind of goes against what a lot of people say, is to find the easiest fish to catch. I know that all of us want to go out there and hopefully catch keepers and stuff like that, or take something home. But if you want to get better at light tackle jigging, you actually have to light tackle jig and catch fish. So go out there where some of those smaller fish are, where you know some of those fish that maybe, you know, on those hogs that you see everyone posting online and stuff like that, but are willing to eat. Go out there and practice your craft then. Get really good at making sure you know how to jig, and then start applying some of those higher level techniques of where you're looking and running from fish that are feeding to find different fish. You know, I really believe that all these fishermen that are catching these big fish, that are putting in that time to find these big fish, are doing so because they have a good knowledge base of how to fish like this. You can't just come out there cold turkey and never jigging and really find these fish and jig them effectively. So take your time, learn on the fish that you can catch right in front of you. Watch your fish finder to make sure you understand what fish look like when you're running your sonar. And I swear it's going to be so much easier to get better at light tackle jigging than you think. If you go out there just trying to hit home runs right away, you're going to be frustrated. And honestly, you'll probably go back to whatever you're doing before and really miss out on one of the best fishing techniques on the Chesapeake Bay. Now, one of the hallmarks of light tackle fishing and light tackle jigging is jigging structure. And I got one resource on here that is absolutely amazing. If you can go on, you can see right now, I'm showing you this, I call it a bath view from NOAA, and it just has all these bottom contours and other areas that they've done like 3D sonar down on the bottom there. And man, it is just awesome because you can see every little bump, ridge, nook, cranny, wreck, and everything in the fishing or in the area that you fish. And you can get the GPS coordinates down there at the bottom, plug them into your machine, and go out and just see what's out there and see if you can fish those areas. Now, fish might be there in June, it might not be there in December. So it really is getting as many spots as you can, getting out there as much as possible, and seeing what's out there and kind of keeping a log of that. Tip I got from a great fisherman when you're doing that kind of stuff: if you do find a fish on a certain wreck, instead of naming it, you know, wreck Z or whatever, name it the date you caught the fish. So in your fish finder, when you go to label that wreck, name it the date you actually caught fish on it. That way, when you're looking through your, you know, your spots, you're out there fishing and you see you caught one on 6/21 right here, you know to go back to that fishing spot in June. All right, so my final thoughts on light tackle jigging, and my final thing that I would say when you go out there is, I think I've circled around this a bunch, but be patient. If you know this spot is going to produce, if you've done all your research, you know, online and the chart viewers, you're seeing bait around, you're seeing birds working, it's okay to wait for the tide to turn. It's okay to wait to see if they show up. It's better than going and burning gas and really not knowing what's out there. All right, so hopefully this information was helpful. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. I'm happy to answer them. And I'll be doing more videos, especially videos of me jigging out in the lower Potomac this fall on some of the best striper fishing of the year in the Chesapeake Bay. All right, go ahead and click that subscribe button too. Click the bell so you're notified every time we put out new content.